Hi, man. We're on. All right, so we're here at Power Monkey, legendary Power Monkey. Outside it's beautiful. And so I've just been interviewing a lot of people as I travel more and kind of like picking people's brains about gymnastics and kind of where we're all going. And so I figured no better opportunity to hang out with you guys for a little while.
Thank you for having us.
Do you guys want to give people like a very short background on where you're from and what you're doing now from gymnastics point of view so they kind of get context?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm recently retired, so just involved in our club gym in Reno, Nevada. We have one in Reno and one in Sparks, so kind of helping on some management stuff there, but a lot still involved in terms of camps, clinics, things around the country. Yep,
had quite an extensive background yourself with a couple Olympic cycles and
2 Olympics,
OU and stuff.
World Championships and University of Oklahoma, so it's kind of a quick reference. About 10 years about the national team, senior national team, so lots of fun.
Yeah, man. Cool. Dave?
I am primarily working with adults these days who are aspiring gymnasts later in life who didn't grow up with it through my company Power Monkey, which is one of the reasons why we're here. Work a little bit with kids in the summers doing the same kind of camps and clinics that Jake does. I don't work very much with Team USA right now. I had a 10-year position with USA Gymnastics and with the USOC. That was the athlete rep position where I helped the athletes at the national team level and the Olympic level kind of navigate a lot of different issues from funding to housing and all that other stuff. My term ended last year, and now I am basically devoting more of my time to how to get adult gymnastics to be a little bit more of a thing so that people have better resources, better understanding of kind of what's available to them to be able to move better.
Yeah, and I think between the three of us, we have quite a bit of perspective from, I guess, our careers as gymnasts, but also obviously I'm a medical provider. You guys were both involved in the national team and have been involved with different universities and stuff. And I think, the biggest reason I wanted to talk to you guys is because, I don't think in my 15 to 20 years I've ever seen gymnastics change at a faster rate than what's happening in the last few years. And I think that a lot of people are understanding that change is important, but they don't really know how to go about maybe working with some new concepts of training, or like how they talk about strength and conditioning, how they talk about involving multiple people inside the gym instead of just a coach and an athlete and a parent, So I guess that's my first question is, where do you guys think, specifically men's gymnastics, because I'll probably interview some women's coaches on the other side, but where do you think men's gymnastics is going the next few years and things that people should be thinking about or concerned about in terms of training, health, medical stuff like that?
You want to start?
Go for it.
So there's a couple things that I think I look at as the main challenges with men's gymnastics. I think navigating what's happening with the NCAA is going to be an enormous challenge come the next few years. With the dropping of a bunch of different sports, it's going to have some serious ramifications all the way down the pipeline of, all the way down to our club levels. I don't think we really see it as clearly as we need to how important NCAA programs are for our developmental age group kids to be able to have something at the end of that high school level to be able to say, okay, I'm doing this to be able to potentially have a scholarship at the end of that cycle. So if those are lost, which is a very real possibility with what's going on, just a couple weeks ago, UIC dropped a program as well, announced it for next year. And that brings us down to about 14 or 15 programs left in the country that have scholarship programs left. And so if that happens, or when that happens, I think as a program and as a sport, we need to figure out and be prepared for what's next.
Sure.
So for me, the immediate 5 to 10 year plan is going to be, how do we navigate what we've known up to this point no longer existing?
Right.
So it's going to have complete changes in terms of potentially demographics of kids that are involved with the sport, numbers of kids that are involved with the sport, how they view the sport of men's gymnastics. Is it just an Olympic sport now without having the potential for a scholarship? So I think that's something that is weighing heavily on a lot of men's gymnastics coaches, athletes at the higher level. And I think it's something that we need to just continue to have the conversation about, because it's a very real thing that we're having to come to terms with pretty soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the gymnastics in the men's side is so different because so many guys go through college, then keep training on for other things, worlds or Olympic level, versus the women's maybe not so much. And I think people don't realize that when you take away one of those programs, you really reduce the opportunity for someone to go get 4 more years to train, maybe at the Olympic level. But for me personally, college gymnastics changed my entire life, completely. And did you want to go to Stanford first before you made the Olympic decision, or was that kind of like as part of your plan?
I went to JO championships when I was 13 or 14 in San Francisco, and I visited Stanford for the first time when I was teenager.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the school, and I only wanted to go there. I did go to OU on a recruiting trip, and that was my second choice. But I got into Stanford, and I couldn't turn it down.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts? What do you think?
I totally agree. I think the the first step is the NCAA program. Obviously, especially this year. I mean, everybody who's on the World Championship team went to an NCAA program. Right. I'm pretty sure if I remember right. So I think it's basically a feeder program into Team USA, and you're looking beyond just collegiate and just our national team. You're now looking at world championship teams and the Olympic teams. And if we want to continue, that's one of the most popular parts is the Olympic, the Olympic competition. So when people see that, I think we do get a lot of funding and a lot of exposure from the Olympic Games. And if we're even if like last 2 Olympic Games, 5th place, but we still have a lot of exposure. Yeah. But if you start taking away these programs, that funnel that we have right now could very well disappear into a less filtered funnel where maybe we might have 1 or 2 guys who can kind of filter through or have enough training or the accessibility to train with the things that we need, the tape, the trainers, all of the things that we actually need to get to that level that colleges provide. We could see the drop off in the national level and the world level that we're competing at right now as well. And I think that's a huge issue because that could just, not only do you lose the colleges, then you'll lose the funding and the support system, and then the sport just could
kind of collapses. Yeah, that's super scary. And from my point of view, definitely as a medical provider, I see that so many kids come to Champion and all they want, live, sleep, breathe, eat college gymnastics. They watch every college meet, they go to the camps, they get recruited, and that's all they care about. Like guys that join our programs just want to get to a scholarship. And I think that for me, understanding how much the colleges kind of weigh heavy on our talent pool, whatever you would call it, but also that like we have to take probably better care of the younger athletes from like the 8 to 15 age range. I think a lot of guys get problems there. So I think that from my point of view, I think that's going to be the biggest changes that I see is more integrated medical care, more integrated strength and conditioning care, more integrated nutrition, because if we can get kids through their kind of lower ranges where they're super high level, I think that allows them to get through puberty, and then they get on to bigger and better things, and then they have 6 more years of kind of to work with,
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, that was going to be the other point to bring up is the integration of outside resources in terms of becoming a more well-rounded gymnast.
Right.
And we never had that growing up, Gymnastics is a stubborn sport, and coaches and athletes do the things that were taught to them by their previous generation. And so guys like yourself who have had a serious impact on the trajectory of where gymnastics is going by bringing in some new resources and new studies that are being done and really looking at it from more of a scientific perspective in conjunction with just a technical perspective. It's an incredibly important change to not only create athletes who are good at their sport, but healthy within their sport for longer periods of time when their careers are over. So I look at gymnastics as, and I love the motto of USA Gymnastics of begin here and go anywhere, because to me, being a gymnast and growing up doing the sport of gymnastics doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go on to an Olympic team, doesn't mean you have to go on a world championship team or a collegiate program.
Wasn't me.
That's not the goal here. With these kids that are growing up loving the sport, it's about giving them the ability to move better, giving them the ability to understand how to move their body properly, and then apply that to whatever is their passion. Right. And if it turns out that gymnastics is that, phenomenal, great. I'm hugely the proponent of it. But if it's not, gymnastics has established a base that's going to make them better, safer, and healthier for whatever that thing is that they want to go on later on. So for me, to allow that to happen safely, I think it's critical. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of what you do and the rest of the medical staff that we have here at camp and so many other resources that are slowly trying to grab hold of what we've had in the gymnastics world as kind of, previous generation, just pass along to the next, to be able to say, okay, there are some other things that we can be doing that will make our athletes better, safer, and healthier moving forward. And I think it's critical. I think it's hugely important, and I think what you're doing is going to allow our athletes to become better because of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think, I obviously do a lot of work, but also I think, the other flip side to that is that a lot of what people think is my information is a filtered through of, honestly, like Power Monkey. So, like, we're going to have Chris Hinshaw in a couple days, like, people ask me, like, wow, you know so much about energy systems. Like, I just listen to people, man. I just listen to what Chris says, and, Jamie with nutrition or whatever else. So I think it's really about everyone kind of taking that open-minded approach to maybe trying to get a strength coach involved, or trying to get a nutritionist or mental health. Like, I think that's the next biggest step from my point of view, is not just about medical care, but also about, like, there's so many people that their entire career is strength conditioning or whatever it is. And I think that if we want to really have the next 10 years be successful, it has to be a team with the athlete in the center, not like parent, coach, whatever, and then we find people as we go.
For sure. I noticed at Olympic Training Center when I lived there. I lived the OTC in Colorado Springs for 4.5 years. everything was there. And I think it was kind of the start of what we'd like to see creating that whole athlete. We had the sports psychologists available to us. We had the nutritionists available to us. We had the sports science department above our gym to be able to do testing on us and see what worked, what didn't work when we were doing specific exercises. And I think it was the start of integrating all those systems together, using the high-end athletes as kind of the guinea pigs for a lot of what we were doing, and then taking that and filtering it down to the club and younger level athlete to give them accessibility to the things that are normally only available to the elite of the elite. And so, you know, I say it all the time, where like, man, I wish I would have known this when I was younger, right? You find out things so late in your career that if you had that accessible to when you were younger, it would have had a huge trajectory change in terms of your ability to stay healthy, to become a smarter athlete and a better athlete, and someone that can maybe have a lifespan that's 10 years longer because you had those tools when you were a little bit younger. So I think it's just giving people an accessible route to so many things that are normally only available to elite athletes.
I think that's super funny, because I was literally explaining that exact thing, kind of bridging the gap between, because every sport is different in terms of the strength training or whatever training or medical aspect of it you're going to come from is probably different for every sport. There are certain foundations that I think everybody can, you know, improve on or use in their training and have a benefit for. But it was pretty funny. We were talking to Mike Service, saying how he laughed at my scar on my knee, and he's like, "Is that like, do you have to have that to be a gymnast? Like, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, maybe, you know, you guys should have incorporated squats, you know, at a younger age and build that foundation there. That would make a more stable, you know, we were landing on everything, your knees all the time, you're pounding on everything, you know."
Sensitive topic.
Exactly, you know, it's a very common thing. And he was like, I think, but that's what I think is so important. Gymnastics is different from a lot of other sports. So us trying to figure this out now, and even now that I've been doing Olympic lifts, I've learned about flossing, you know, with a band. And I was like, I wish I would have known about this. So when I was doing ring strength, you know, in my training, I could have done that before, get some blood flow in there, and things wouldn't have hurt so bad, and I wouldn't have elbow issues now. You know, there's all these things, just like Dave said, that I've learned now, and I'm like, man, I wish I had that in training, because I would have not only made it easier, probably safer, and made me a little bit better as well.
Yeah, and I see both sides of the coin here, because obviously at Champion we have a big strength conditioning staff who helps us and has taught us, but I think that a lot of people want to learn those things, but there's a lot of things that I would not recommend gymnasts do from a strength and conditioning point of view or from a medical point of view. I think it's very specific. And so, like my boss with baseball players, like we have pro baseball players that come and they literally have $1 million arm, and if you mess that up, you're going to really like ruin someone's career. So it's about, again, collaborating. It's about kind of being, okay, what do you think from the gymnastics point of view is essential body weight, we have to do this. Like, okay, well, what do you think about as a accessory work or strength we can do in the summer to kind of build your legs up? And I think Dr. Sands has written some incredible articles, and even recently he was like, the biggest thing we have to do is get more of a standardized coaching education system in place to be like, okay, if you want to be a coach, I mean, I was 15 years old and I was like, yeah, I'll coach, sure. And they were like, yeah, take this group and go ahead. And I was like, okay, right. But I think that you should, if you really have the goal of coaching a high-level athlete or any athlete at the club, you should probably go through a couple-year curriculum of like basic anatomy, basic physiology, basic health and safety, and I think that's probably where we're going now.
I think they used to do that a lot more.
Yeah.
You used to have a PE education to be able to actually be a coach. A lot of international programs and countries do that a lot better than we do. You know, my Russian coaches all had to be physical education masters to be able to actually teach and coach at that level. I don't think we've done a good enough job. We've kind of strayed from that. Probably within the last few decades of not putting enough emphasis on the education that it takes to really understand the needs of an athlete from a lot of different perspectives. It normally is just, you know, more reps, more turns, a technical understanding of a particular skill, as opposed to, you know, what are the other things that this athlete needs to be doing aside from just more reps of a particular skill.
I think in the last decade the skills have gotten so insane and they're so hard that now we're seeing the force of what, you know, those skills do. Like just basic landings are 10, 15 times body weight, and like now the science is catching up, but I think we have to really take a step back and be like, okay, if your goal is to do a double-double someday on floor when you're 10 or 12, you have to be preparing your legs and over multiple years kind of building your capacity up to handle that, because it only takes a few of those to go wrong, man, before something really bad happens.
That's what we talk about all the time, right? Skill specificity, sport specificity, and, you know, we get a lot of questions about certain skills and things that might be a little odd or different that, you know, we wouldn't recommend to the everyday athlete or the everyday person just going into the gym, because their goals don't line up with what the needs are of an athlete in the gymnastics world. So those questions are so important. Those questions are, what are the goals? What are you trying to get out of this? What are your long-term goals with this? And then assess the type of training, the type of preparation that needs to go into that particular athlete. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a model. And so sometimes you can be doing you can be having detrimental effects to these athletes if you're not asking the right questions, right? You can be giving them things and tools that are not going to be benefiting them if their preparation is not correct, if they're not looking at the long term. So I think it's really, really important to have someone really delve into the needs of specific athletes in their sports, gymnastics being obviously one that's fairly complicated in terms of the needs. But then having someone, I'll use you as an example, Dave, because obviously you're fairly tapped into it, but from the medical side, you've been through a fairly wide range of different coaching positions, right? You've been an athlete through a collegiate program. You're a coach. You're also a medical provider. So you have the viewpoints of a lot of different sides that most people don't have. So if you're just going to a regular DPT who has no idea about the needs are for a gymnast, it's going to be a little bit challenging for them to really understand what the stresses are, what the goals are for that person to say, is this exercise okay? Is this not okay? What are my, routes to take to make sure that I'm preparing my body or rehabbing my body appropriately for what's going to be coming next. So I think, like you're saying, like finding people and resources that understand what you do is so critical. You really have to find people that have the education and the knowledge of what your goals are.
Yeah, I think, at Champion too, so like I would never treat a high-level baseball player. I just wouldn't. It's too risky, and I don't know, but I think we were talking today about...
But let me just ask you, is it too risky because of the dollar sign that's associated with some of these players? Or is it too risky because you're just not willing and you don't have the education to go
I think it's too
along with
risky
that
because
sport?
up to 70%, every elbow Tommy John is relatively the same. But that last 30% of an interval program, of a throwing program, I don't know the terminology, the stresses of curveballs versus throwing, so like that last percent probably. But on the other hand, I was telling Jake today that I think I see the most guys fall off is if they get a slap repair or something happens, they actually had good rehab up to like phase 3, but phase 4 and phase 5, which is like, okay, 5 yams, 5 to pelt, 5 to Kachevs, then you're done, cut it off. Tomorrow we'll stress you a little more. I think that's where people fall apart is they don't have an advanced strength and conditioning part of their rehab, and they don't have a return to sport program, and so they just fall back in the cracks.
That's sport specificity at that point that you need someone that knows exactly what goes into the highest level.
Like you with your Tkachev, right? You're like, oh, somebody else is doing Tkachev for 3 months, so I'll give it a whirl.
You're basically, you're going off what this guy had,
blind, right?
And it's just like going off.
And that's a medical. That's on our side. That's the medical problem.
It's just again the medical side catching up to what the sport is already doing from a skill level standpoint. The sport is skyrocketing so quickly in terms of what guys are doing from a skill perspective. It's frightening to me, to be honest with you. Like I retired from the sport 10 years ago, and what the guys are doing now, like I am so happy. Like I get the question a lot, like, do you wish you were still competing? Absolutely, 100% no. Like I don't know. You retired fairly recently, but I can't imagine doing what these guys are doing and being able to keep up and try to make a world championship Olympic team with what's going on these days, and to keep them healthy and to be able to keep them ready to go year in and year out. The medical side needs to catch up to be able to say, oh my God, what's happening with the stresses of these movements?
It's super overwhelming when you create a program like that. You're
The medical side, but the strength and conditioning, all those other things in terms of preparation.
Energy
for
systems
these athletes.
too.
It's so important for them to have a well-rounded approach as opposed to just what they're used to of more turns from technical side and just someone kind of giving them corrections in terms of what they should be doing to fix some adjustments in their actual movement.
Yeah, it takes a lot of humility to kind of, as a coach, and I've had this when I was not a medical provider, but to admit, like, okay, this is the edge of my knowledge level. Yeah. Maybe I should reach out to find somebody else. It's hard as a coach because, like, you want to have the answer, you want to be the person in control, and that's really hard to kind of shift that responsibility out of somebody else.
I think the best do that though.
Yeah,
you recognize you don't know everything, right? It's kind of naive to think that you do know everything. And what's important from what I found, especially with having Power Monkey Camp and surrounding yourself with such high level people in so many different areas, is that the more you surround yourself with people who have been successful in their own specific fields, the more resources you have to pull from. And like you're mentioning, speaking with Hinshaw about energy systems and speaking with Jay about programming and periodization techniques and things like that, those are the things that allow you to become a better coach and more reliable in terms of avenues to give to an athlete as they start to come with you with struggles. If you are trying to come up with something off the top of your head with someone who's at a very high level and whose struggles are very real and you're just coming up with things because you want to have all the right answers, that's potentially detrimental in a lot of different ways, right? So you have to have humility. You have to recognize that you don't know everything if you want to become a really high level, and the best coaches should do that.
Yep. Yeah, so kind of switching gears, I think the next thing I wanted to talk about was when I was in the UK, Niall Wilson had a really good Q&A with Nick while he was there. And so Nick asked him, like, what do you think were, because he's had a long career and he's doing really well. And he was saying, you know, what are the things that you think are the most successful, or made you the most successful that your coaches did or that your parents did? And he was saying, well, I had a coach that no matter the outcome, he was still on my side all the time. You know, he bombed at a couple meets and he was really backed up. His coach was like, you know, it's like that happens. That's part of it. And he says his parents were super supportive always. It was always about, hey, did you have fun? Are you still enjoying this? Not about like, I can't believe you didn't hit high bar or whatever. So what do you guys have recommendations for coaches, medical providers? There's a lot of parents listen to this. A lot of coaches and medical providers kind of are wondering where to go. Like, do you have advice for the new generation of those guys?
Why don't you start with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of exactly how my parents were, and I feel like I think it's going to be different for every kid, and they need to understand how their kid works. It's just like coaching. You need to know how this person reacts, because they are going to react different than this person, right? So I think understanding how your kid works. I was one of the ones who I always liked the positive coaching aspect and the positive parents, where, you know, or if you get a little off track, they're going to be a little tough on you and make you get back on track. But when you're doing well or you have a tough day, they know you care about it and that you want to be the best that you can be, and they're supportive and they're there for you. I think one of the most important things a coach can do is not only being very aware of the training program that you're having, but also have that trust with the athlete, and the athlete needs to trust the coach. And where if you're hurting or you're physically exhausted, you cannot make something, rather than being like, don't be a baby, keep going. You know, there is a point where obviously you're going to have to push the athletes to a pretty extreme amount of, you know, physical effort and exhaustion, but there's also a point where there's a lot more risk than reward for doing that. And I think a good coach can kind of see that and spot it and have good communication and trust with the gymnast or the athlete, whatever sport you're in, and acknowledging that. Because there was plenty of times where we'd be in training and I'm like, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I'm a little nervous to go for this one. Like, if you're that tired, let's split it up. Let's do a half routine instead of a full routine. And I think a good coach knows where to do that.
Tinkering a little bit as someone feels,
From a parental side of things, I will have to agree 100% with Niall. I had both of my parents were 100% supportive with everything. I played a ton of sports growing up. They never pushed. They always wanted to make sure that I was doing it because it meant something to me. And they traveled around the world with me. They came to every competition I ever had internationally. And I had an extended support system. You know, my brother and my sister, and I made an Olympic trials in 2008. I had 400 people in the stands. I was fortunately not that far away from my hometown.
That's crazy.
I was, you know, in Philly, and I grew up just outside New York. So I had a ton of people. I had relatives flying from Italy for it. I mean, my support system was vast, and they all had the same mentality of, we're going to do everything we can to help Dave succeed. And so I felt very, very fortunate in terms of knowing that I did it because I loved it, and not because I was doing it for somebody else. And that's why I think there's a period in, you know, early teenage years where you kind of start to say, okay, why am I doing this? Because you have so many other things available to you. Right? You hit high school and friends are doing stuff, and you have other sports that you might be being pulled to, and, you know, the amount of schoolwork that you're doing is kind of through the roof, and you're feeling like you're being pulled in so many different directions. And unless gymnastics is something that is enjoyable for you, where you feel like it's an escape from those other things, it's going to end up pulling you down, and it's going to feel like, all right, if something's going to get cut out of here, it's going to be this, right? And that's what we want to try to avoid. We want to keep gymnastics fun. It should always be fun, right? No matter what level you're at, it should never feel like it's a chore to go into the gym. It's going to have you resent the sport at some time later down the road. You're going to you hate it. You're going to finish it and be like, I did this for 20 years and I can't stand it. I never want to see it or bring my kid to gymnastics ever again. The goal is when you're done, like, man, that enhanced my life. That made my life better. I have my best friends in the world because of this sport. Being part of a collegiate team is better. The best thing that's ever been, you know, any team that I've ever been part of was because of that Stanford team. And it's what I remember in terms of some of the best memories of my life, because I always treat it as something to be positive with. It's not always easy. I don't want to make it seem like it's
cherries.
No, that's just unrealistic. I mean, there's some serious challenges that go along with it, and serious injuries too. That we get that a lot of questions when we're doing camps, and little kids ask us, "Do you ever get injured?" Right? you can't sugarcoat those things. I mean, gymnastics is a dangerous sport inherently, and there are going to be some things that are standing in your way as roadblocks. But those roadblocks are there for a reason.
Right.
They make you better. They make you a person who knows that they can achieve things when a barrier is put in their way. But a strong support system and having a really fun and positive time in the gym will allow you to do the sport for much longer periods of time and have a good relationship with the sport. So I think that's hugely important.
Yeah, totally. Anything else, or?
No, I mean, that just relaying back to the parent thing,
Yeah.
I think one of the kind of your mindset on that reminds me of just a quick example of what my parents were kind of explaining one time. And it's like, if you're, you don't like the sport where it's to the point where it's that much of a chore, or it's that, and I've kind of been there with my parents where it wasn't necessarily I wanted to be done, but I was like, maybe this isn't the place that I should be training. Like, well, you don't have to, like, if you don't want to go to college, you don't have to go, you can go to the training, so you can do this, you can do whatever you want. And then it really put it back into in my ballpark where it's my choice. Oh, I'm not doing this because I'm not going to college because my parents want me to go to college. I want to go to college because I want to be a part of a team. It's a good gym. It's a good program. I'm going to make friends there. And then it became more on me, which I think is exactly kind of what you're talking about.
I agree completely.
Your choice,
And the other thing that I will say that what made me love gymnastics is, for as much as it's an individual sport and people think of it as an individual sport, I love the team aspect of the sport. I grew up in a very, very strong team at Surgeons in New Jersey.
Yep.
It made me want to compete for a college team.
Yeah.
That college team made me want to compete for Team USA. Every aspect of the sport, for as much as it's an individual sport, what made me love the sport was competing with people out on the floor and knowing that your routine meant that the team was going to succeed.
Totally.
And so I looked at it as we were doing this together, and the bonds that I have with the guys at all of those different stages are still incredibly strong. And I want people to know that gymnastics is more of a team sport than an individual sport.
Right.
People don't give it enough credit for being a team sport, and that's what makes the sport special to me is doing it with other people and not so much just raising your hand and thinking it's about you.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think just kind of wrapping things up is the biggest thing that gymnastics ever gave me through the team aspect is just like my value system and my work ethic. And I mean, one thing my coach did really, really well is he really kept us kind of in not a straight and narrow, but he was just respect, discipline, self-control, stuff like that. And I think that's what set the foundation for me to get through 10 years of schooling and stuff at a high level. And all of my best friends from school that were in that team environment together, we all kind of like pushed each other to raise better in all parts of our life. Like we would stay in on Friday nights and we would study because we had to meet that weekend, or like we would stay the whole season dry because we knew it mattered for our team, whatever. And I think people who are definitely looking at this as like a just skill thing, that's important, but also like I think a lot of what we find at Power Monkey with the ex-coaches are because we had value systems through 10, 20 years, that discipline and self-control, and that kind of, I've seen people, my teammates, go on to do incredible things with their careers because they had the work ethic that gymnastics gave them. And that's kind of why I'm still involved and why I want to help kids, is because I see that in the younger kids that I treat and coach. It's like, man, if I could just help you get through college, get a scholarship, that's incredible. That makes a big change in your life.
For sure.
And
agreed.
I would think that's just, that's the part of being a team, So when you're a part of that collegiate team, and like how Dave was saying, your routine's going to count. Not only do you want to do well for them, but you go out and do well, it brings everybody together. Even if you do bad and then you come back and your teammates still, embrace you and like, no, we got it. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
It builds that bond with people, and that's what the fitness industry kind of does really well with, especially in the CrossFit world. It's that everybody, let's go work out and kind of die together. Right? It's that aspect, and that's what I always felt like in competition was so cool. It bonds you so well with everybody.
Picking each other up, especially in like the rougher times, for sure. All right, cool. Well, we'll keep it at that. Just a quick half hour, but appreciate you guys' time and appreciate all you've done with Power Monkey. We would not be sitting here if it wasn't for you. So
thank you very much, man. It's great to have you guys.
Thanks, guys.